So, how exactly did Game of Thrones happen for you?
Game of Thrones?
Yeah, for you.
Show? You said you weren't going to ask me a single question about Game of Thrones.
I lied.
A fucking lie.
I
That's all
lied.
anyone wants to know. How did it happen for me? This is an oft-told tale, but essentially,
Condense it.
yeah. Well, I will. I've gotten very good at condensing it. We moved out here. My wife Mandy and I, who's also an actor and is now like me a producer. We were taking any job we could find. I was selling toner cartridges by phone it made Glen Ross look like a high-end operation, this place. So I was doing that for $11 an hour and trying to write my first pilot and go on acting auditions, what little I had. That was back when you would move out to LA for pilot season, as if that meant anything.
Yeah.
We're coming out for pilot season. They're going to offer
do
us pilots the second we get off the plane. So I did that, and my wife was doing nannying jobs, and she took a nannying job with David Benioff and Amanda Peet for their young baby, and that's how we got to know each other. And then he read my first pilot that I wrote, and was very complimentary and gave me a lot of notes and sort of mentored me for a little while, and that led to opening a few doors to get assistant gigs in that arena. And then when the pilot was picked up for Thrones, he brought me along to assist Dan, and I at that time became sort of the in-house, I won't say expert, because the people online will gleefully remind me that I'm not a Song of Ice and Fire expert, but I was the best they had. And that was, it sort of went from there. I sort of became the guy in the meetings to advise on the mythology of the show and the books. And before I knew it, I was writing the 4th episode of the first season. And before I knew it, I was in charge of, at least in terms of the writing capacity, the writing producer capacity of one of the 2 sets almost immediately.
Yeah.
It was this an insane trial by fire. And a lot of that was just because we were this weird show. To HBO at the time, fantasy shows were not, there were no premium genre shows. We were first, really. So they didn't know what to do with us, and we were in Belfast, and they kind of left us alone, and we sort of figured out how to do it and kind of reinvented. I don't know if reinvent's the word, because I'm still not sure anybody does it production-wise the way we did it, because it was crazy, but that's what we did, and that worked out.
What do you think the percentage is of people who hate versus love you for Game of Thrones?
Oh, wow. Hate versus love me for... Well, Jesus. I mean, it's fluctuated. So I think I was pretty well loved by the fandom for the first 4 seasons, because I was seen as kind of the guy in the inside, which I don't think was ever really true. But you know, I suppose in the room I was the guy advocating more for, well, in the book it says this, you know, for better or for worse. So I think I was known for that for a while, but then I was assigned one of the most controversial episodes in the show, which was the Sansa wedding night rape episode.
Yeah.
Which was admired by some, loathed by many, tolerated by others. So I got a lot of blowback for that, as if it was entirely my idea and my fault. And I look, I'll still stand by the episode, but you know, I bore the brunt of that. So I was kind of public enemy number 1 there for a while, and then I kind of coasted.
Jeremy and David and Dan, all of us, this was very carefully plotted out. It was a very hard day on set, but also I will say, as a writer and as a producer, an exhilarating day, because the work being done that day, I think, is some of the best work being done on the show, in terms of the way it's shot, in the terms of the camera moves, the lighting, the dressing, and most of all, these performances, these faces.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a strong scene. I mean, it's even though it's cruel, but
I mean, Alfie and Sophie are they're just extraordinary. And if you ask why we wanted to bring Sansa into this world, it didn't have to do with this scene. It had to do with the idea of her coming back to reclaim her family home, and encountering this broken character who betrayed her family, and the fireworks of these actors, two of our finest actors in the cast, playing off each other. That was why we made the decision to put Sansa in Winterfell.
And then I think my final season episode was pretty well regarded, by most. And then the finale and the back half of season 8 was disliked by several people, and I think some like it too. I think the people that hate it are more vocal than the people that don't.
I liked it.
I know you mentioned you liked it, which great. Thank you. But I think my episode was generally well liked in the final season, even by people that hated the final season. And I'm very, very proud of that episode. But I think one of the reasons people like it is it's a relatively gentle episode where nothing horribly controversial happens. So it's kind of easy to like. I'm very proud of it. I'm not trying to be self-deprecating, but it is kind of easy to like because it's sort of a love letter to the actors, as I've said, and to the characters. Darren Franich didn't like it though. I remember that.
Darren Franich,
my friend Darren Franich. Not that he was my friend back then, so it's not really. He didn't even like that one.
The only redeeming quality about Darren Franich is that he likes the good fight as much or more than I do, and that's his only redeeming
Good
quality.
Fight's a hell of a show.
Good Fight's a hell of a show.
So Darren, I remember, was sort of ho-hum on my final season episode, but we won't hold that against him. Anyway, that was a long way of saying, I don't know, what would you ask the percentage? Yeah. I don't know. Let's say amongst general fans, maybe it's 50-50. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. It's kind of had some time.
Die-hard book people, I think, still hate me for my association in general with it. But who the fuck knows? I did my best.
You're never gonna make everybody happy.
And I was really pleased with that last episode. I was pleased to be able to have that one to do. I always preferred, as a writer and frankly even as a viewer of the show, the quieter, more people talking in rooms episodes of the show. So and you know, even just in terms of my on-set experience, I probably enjoyed the earlier half of the series maybe a little more than the second half, because I had a little less, I just had less to do from day to day in the final 2 seasons, because those seasons were shot, they were big budget kind of spectacles, and there was just simply less for me to do as a producer, because you know, there'd be a week where it was essentially shots of people running and screaming and cranes and green screen, and you know, there wasn't much for me to contribute, whereas as an on-set producer, where I really was able to contribute and collaborate with the actors and the director was in those meaty kind of dialogue scenes. So I appreciated very much the guys giving me that second episode, that last season. That was a real gift to let me have it, you know, and let me run with it.
Yeah, I think it worked out well.
Sure. I mean, you know, I think the show. Well, I think we talked about this when we were doing Max von Sydow. I think I'm never going to tell anybody how to feel about the show, about how it ended up or any of it. But I do think that in some circles or in some way with the critical hive mind of it all, everyone was kind of going insane with the end. I think there was this idea, which frankly I think is false, that it was the last show everyone was going to watch together. I don't think that's true, especially now because everyone's home watching everything. Yeah. But I think there was this weird collective cultural fear that this was the last water cooler show.
I feel
unfounded. But I
feel like the same thing got said about Lost when Lost was at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I think everyone went a little nuts, you know, and every single moment was just, which is fine, you know, good. I guess you want something that you make to have enough interest that people are analyzing every frame, but it was rather exhausting at the end. I mean, I still feel kind of exhausted by it. It's weird to even think about, you know? I don't know.
Well, it's a lot. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of pressure. I mean, it's a lot of pressure to have on you to know. I mean, in some degree, to know like there are that many people putting so much stock into every single thing that you're doing.
Yeah, and it's great. I think where it bothered me and still bothers me is when it turns personal in a way that and that happens. And I catch myself doing it. I've tried very hard to never even publicly, like if I don't like a movie, I don't tweet about it.
Yeah.
I even try to be careful when doing screen drafts to generally pick genres that involve people who are dead, so I'm not slagging off people who are working currently.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always happen. I mean, sometimes I do have to express a negative opinion about something that's more contemporary or somebody that is, but I try not to because I just know how that feels, and I also might work with that person.
No.
For all I know. But even that said, even when I criticize, it's when someone makes a personal judgment about me, and certainly as my boss. I mean, I really haven't borne too much of this. It was my former bosses, really have just been kind of raked over the coals.
Yeah.
As judgments about them as human beings, because of creative choices made on the show.
Yeah.
And that's a very easy thing a trap to fall into. Any viewer does it. But I think it got turned up to 11 in some cases with them. So that's where I feel bad about it or annoyed about it. But even now, I'm trying to be sanguine. And what's nice is I came back to Twitter, and at this point, I mean, the show's over. No one gives a fuck. Everyone's moved on. No one really bothers me anymore. It's nice.
Yeah. No, it's funny how something like that can be so in the sphere, everybody's sphere, and then just be gone like that.
Yeah. Especially now, I think, Jesus, with the last 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that feels like a million years ago.
But also, we've had Watchmen since then too. So
we've had Watchmen, which was, my God, Watchmen was great.
Watchmen
was great.
Really was. Even I feel like anytime any of the Lost guys do any show post Lost, all I hear about it, all that I hear in my head is like how they still get shit about Lost.
Do they though?
Oh, I think so. Anytime I read a review about any new show that any of those guys have, they mention
the finale of Lost.
And I'm like, let it go. How many? Yeah. It only had a couple ways it could end.
And I'm sure that'll happen. That'll probably haunt David and Dan and maybe me for the rest of our careers too. I mean, possibly. I don't know.
What it all means.
I think we might live.
Oh, I think we might live.
It's just brilliant.
And that's a clue to anybody watching. Every single person in this scene lives through the battle.
That I hadn't even thought about that.
And that's why I put it in. I said, I'm going to at least seed this and see if anyone picks up on it.
The Battle of the Bastards.
All without a shred of combat ability.
They live through the battle.
Sir Jaime Lannister, fabled hero.
Some people thought that was a cheat, but you know what? I don't care.
No, I think it's...
You want to call... I mean, plot armor. I heard that term thrown around a lot. Well, all the hobbits had plot armor in Lord of the Rings too, and so did Odysseus in the Odyssey.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of what happens in long-form storytelling,
Stories. Anyway, sure, I get it.
This is a wonderful moment.
Nothing. It's been. I mean, when this is all over, it'll be almost 10 years, and so I've gotten to know some of these actors and be able to write to their strengths and to know what an actor is capable of giving me in any given moment. Alfie's a great example of somebody who I know I can write an entire scene where he doesn't speak and script the subtext of what's going on, and he will convey all of that behind the eyes or with a look, and that's an incredible gift to a writer. The kinds of actors that can do that.
Littlefinger, because Littlefinger has been a fascinating character for me to watch throughout the series because he has had a hand in, I feel like, almost everything that has happened.
Yeah, and a lot of it. There's that great look. This is, again, like, I praise our actors, but like that's another thing where, you in those big crowd scenes, you shoot coverage of everybody. They take forever. Those scenes in the Great Hall where everyone's reacting to things, and so you've got a camera on Aiden reacting to the whole scene. Aiden Gillen, who plays Littlefinger. And there's one little bit he did where he reads the thing about Daenerys arriving, and Aiden just goes, like, oh, okay.
Daenerys Targaryen's alive with dragons. Make a note of that. Like, just watching him internalize that is delicious. But he's an actor, and Sophie and Emilia are actors that fit this description as well. That these two, it's such a gift for a writer to be able to, and I've said this before, to be able to write scenes where you don't have to write any dialogue because they're going to convey everything. And they have that moment in this episode, and then a moment a little later in the montage where they're just sharing a quiet meal together, where the entirety of their experience is conveyed on their faces in just a couple of seconds. And that's true brilliance. That's why I've been spoiled for life. And indeed, I even wrote, I attempted to write a full-on dialogue scene into this episode between Sansa and Theon. I never even put it in the first draft. No one ever even saw it because I was never satisfied with it. And the reason it was because it was just them talking about their trauma and recapping what we already knew. And it felt forced, it felt contrived. You didn't need it. All you needed were those faces. So I needed to script this scene. And the two of them,
the way he delivers that line, arise,
Yeah.
the Night of the Seven Kingdoms. It was, I think we all felt it in the room.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Just how charged that whole time was, and they both just blew it away. They were so fantastic.
Look at that face. I mean, and a credit to David Nutter too. And that moment is a great example just then of that beautiful, radiant smile and tears. That's an example of David having the right instinct and myself having the wrong instinct, because I remember watching that take and going, oh, I think it might be too much. It's too sentimental. And I went and I ran in, and he was going to wrap for the day, and I ran in and I said, can we get a take where she keeps it together? Like, she's obviously very moved, but she keeps it together. And he got the take, and Gwen performed it, and it was great.
You still have a family.
And then I saw the first cut of the episode, and of course that's the shot that was in here, and I thought, oh my God, I was so wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong. We could have wrapped 10 minutes early because...
Thanks, Bryan.
Yeah, sorry about that. Because he was right and she was right. They illuminated something in the scene that I didn't even know was there. I learned a lot from that. And that's the beauty of working on a show like this, is you learn about yourself as a person, you learn about yourself as a writer, you challenge your misconceptions, you make mistakes, you hopefully learn from them as you move on. And to be able to work on something for this long, that's what happens. It really is. It's like an amazing finishing school. I'm going to say this. I don't think Kit and Emilia get enough credit for the complexity and skill of their performances on this show. I think it's very easy.
Totally agree.
I think it's very easy because they're the quote-unquote romantic leads of the show, and they're young people, and they're the two heroes. It's very easy to sort of dismiss them as less interesting as performers or characters, and I just think they are extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
And they're the backbone of the show, particularly in these final seasons. And this scene is a great example. There's so much going on behind the eyes with these two, and so much that isn't being spoken, that is being conveyed. Just right there, where she says, the first thing that she can think about is the fact that he's now a claimant to the throne, and that's the very last thing that he is thinking about. And that's conveyed in his face and her face.
Yeah.
It's just... So I have nothing but the highest regard for the two of them. I think they're wonderful. I know I can write an entire scene where he doesn't speak and script the subtext of what's going on, and he will convey all of that behind the eyes or with a look. And that's an incredible gift to a writer. Most of all, these performances, these faces.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a strong scene. I mean, it's even though it's cruel, but...
I mean, Alfie and Sophie are they're just extraordinary. And the fireworks of these actors, two of our finest actors in the cast playing off each other. That was why we made the decision to put Sansa in Winterfell.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you at the fan conventions for the rest of our lives.
Yes, indeed, in 40 years. We'll see you there.